Shalini, hi.
Hi, good to see you, Raoul.
Good to see you as well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great as well. I was telling everyone that it's been so long that we've been planning this. It was hard to get the samples, and then because of the time difference, it didn't work out. But I'm just really glad that in the festive season before everyone goes on holidays, that we still managed this year to do this. Thank you very much for taking
That's
time.
perfect. Perfect timing right before the holidays.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's my pleasure. Shalini, like I told you before when we had a short call, that it really brings me so much joy when I introduce myself and my friends here who are watching to the creations like these who that have so much power to move you. And I've had some fragrances really from the range of emotions being make me emotional to kind of surprising me altogether, and I realize how much beauty is in simplicity, right? And there is so much magic, and I could not be more excited to be speaking with you
Yeah,
about the
okay, right.
rice.
It's okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I mean, I'm curious, Shalini, please talk a little bit about your roots because you have an Indian name. I know that you have been somewhere in between London, India. So talk a little bit about your roots and where you come from, and maybe it will tie around the fragrances and ingredients. I'm pretty sure.
Well, it's I actually grew up. I was born in Bombay and I grew up between London and Bombay. And it's my life has sort of taken me all over the world. And I was mentioned to you earlier, I went to school at Cambridge in Boston and I was studying architecture. And then I went to study Parsons fashion and living in New York and traveling everywhere. And it's kind of interesting because the series is, this particular collection is really about different places that moved me. So it's really about, how your soul sort of forms from all your experiences, and it brings forward it's almost like when you paint a painting, right? It's everything in your life is bringing you to that point where you're actually making that painting or creating the piece of music. So it's my history, but it's also, the love for architecture, the love for jewels, the love for fragrances, for flowers, for naturals, for the ocean. It's all of that that kind of brings me to this point in my life. So I don't know if that really answers the question of the roots, but obviously roots is everywhere. So
Yeah, absolutely. But you said that you grew up in Bombay, and I grew up in Rajasthan. So, what are your earliest kind of scented memories? For me, is what Jardin Nocturne completely takes me to my childhood. My mom used to
right.
wear jasmine flowers. So that's really my memory of my childhood, and also the chai tea that my mom used to make. So everything that has cardamom and cloves and cinnamon in it, that's for me
Right.
my earliest childhood memories. What is for you, what you remember right now was your childhood memory from London or from Mumbai?
Oh, there's a childhood memory that Shalini actually evokes, which is a rose memory. It's in my parents' garden as a child. And my parents didn't really know about this was happening at the time. But I used to run out as a child to go and smell the tube roses at night under the moonlight, and it was sort of like I couldn't believe how amazing it smelled. And it was like my private personal place to be in this garden and being under the moon, and like nobody knew I had sort of escaped out of the home to do that. So it was really beautiful, and it left such an incredible memory on my sort of olfactory memory, but also a memory of just freedom as a child, right? I mean, being in a garden and having that freedom. And it's interesting because the original fragrance, Shalini, the way that it started was I told Maurice that I always wanted to get a fragrance. I never found a fragrance that could evoke that memory of that, the childhood memory. And then, of course, there's the architecture in India, the palaces. I mean, you come from Rajasthan, all those gorgeous palaces that are now Taj hotels. I mean, it's just, they're so gorgeous. And being a lover of architecture, So that's not really a olfactive memory, but it's like it's left in memory, like the Lake Palace Hotel, and going to all of those hotels when I was younger and seeing those places. And now, Amore Rose is the signature fragrance of the Thought in New York, which is the Pierre. It's sort of come full circle. So
That's
it
very, very, yeah.
happens in life, So it's a fascinating thing. But I mean, there are obviously, memories like you were saying of the spices and sandalwood and, all of that. And we use the mice sandalwood here there because it's the best. I mean, we always use the best. It's not because it's from India, but it's because it's the best,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Shalini, the idea of this simplicity, and for me, every fragrance has a signature, right? So I
Right.
know the name once, and I don't have to read the name when I smell it, right? So you know which fragrance exactly it is, and it like almost magnifies and portrays this ingredient in its full glory. So that idea of kind of taking a note and kind of glorifying it to the beauty, was that your idea, or was it something that Maurice came up with?
Well, Shalini, it's different for every fragrance. I mean, for Shalini, it was really about childhood memories of the tuberose and then, the travel. So it doesn't, to me, Shalini doesn't have a signature, though it does have the tuberose, which was really my childhood, which I really, really, really wanted. And that sort of started the brand. And as I'm sure you've heard this, but because Shalini wasn't really created for sale, it was created for my skin. So Maurice is like, if I was going down and make a painting, and it's like, I'm a perfumer, so I'm painting this for you, a sort of an olfactive painting of your soul. It's everything that brings to it. Now, with some of the others, as a creative person, you're always sort of directed to something. And like Jardin Nocturne, people were sort of like, why don't you put oud in it? And I'm like, it isn't about the oud. Oud is one of the players. It's really about the musical composition to the night. It's the jasmine, the oud, the saffron. There's all of those three combined. So when it did occur, like Amore Rose is the heart energy. So rose to me is the heart energy. So it wasn't really a conscious choice to only focus on the rose, but really question of, having that incredible rose garden. So everything else becomes a secondary player to it. And I do believe in simplicity of design. Maurice believes in simplicity of design. And so we do kind of come together on that. I mean, I think that, even as a fashion designer, you just don't kind of throw everything, something. You sort of keep the simplicity, very pure, very clean, very, so it's almost like the woman shines, right? When I was creating fashion, I was creating only for women. Now it's for men and women with fragrance. But it's like you allow the person to come shine. It's not just, the fragrance is not meant to overpower the wearer. It's supposed to enhance you connect with it at the soul, but it's supposed to enhance your own sort of, and with the naturals, the firm, sorry, it was too long an answer, but
You're sorry. No, it definitely makes sense. And so I was really curious. I mean, you're right. Shalini's one fragrance that, of course, for me, it was tuberose, right? For me,
Right.
that signature was tuberose. But what I was curious about, I didn't know. And of course, it makes sense because it has your name in it. There was, because we did 2004, and then there was a long break.
Right.
Before you came up with, I think it was,
Yeah.
so there was a long break in between.
Yes, it was the long break. It was almost a 10-year break, I think. So, yeah.
So you were just figuring it out, or you didn't know that you wanted to come up with a brand?
Shalini was, as I said, Maurice created it for my skin because I was doing couture, and I really I mean, that's really my crucible is, the haute parfum was sort of born out of that crucible of haute couture. And haute couture is all about using the finest fabrics, working, and you have this incredible amount of design energy that you're putting in. You're having these collections and this vision and design boards and, design meetings and fittings for like hundreds of hours. And in the middle of all of this, I get introduced to Maurice as a friend, through a common friend. It wasn't because I wanted to launch a fragrance brand. And Maurice has just moved from Paris. So he comes to my atelier and he's like, he starts crying, he has tears in his eyes, and he's like, I feel like I'm back home. Because we had, we used to have Piaf playing there, and, it was this kind of feeling of like a little sort of Parisian, couture house, but in New York City, where you had clients coming in and these gorgeous fabrics. And we were selling at retailers as well. I mean, I was at Barney's and Saks and Bergdorf's, but we had the ready to wear at the couture. We had both. And so when he first made Shalini for me, my haute couture client, with haute couture, you have a very close relationship with clients. That's part of the process. They just wanted to wear it. So they're like, we want it. What are you wearing? We want that. So we started giving away little bottles to them. We're like, okay, you can wear it only with your Shalini collection clothes. Nobody else's clothes. And at the end, they were like, well, we were not really happy with the little bottles. We want to buy it. And that's how we decided to launch brand Bergdorf's. But the reality is, I was really a fashion company with one fragrance. It was sort of like, I was really a fragrance brand, and that's my focus was really on fashion. It was only in 2014 where I decided to shift the focus to fragrance. And then we started launching one after the other. And now we have 7.
That's lovely. But how much of couture do you still do, Shalini? Or is it primarily fragrances?
Moment, and I'm not doing it too much to my clients' dismay. So I'm like, why don't you buy the fragrances instead? I'm not doing couture at the moment. I shifted to fragrance primarily, I think, because of energy. I was trying to shift, and also with fashion, it was very much in the US. I wanted to kind of go worldwide, and I like the idea of the naturals, the energy, the idea of sort of transcending boundaries and going all over the world. And, as an artist, because at the end, I'm an artist, it's whatever you choose as your sort of medium, to create. I found that with I could touch more lives, I could go to more places with it, and bring this beautiful energy to more places all over the world. And we're sort of setting worldwide at the moment. So
Here.
It's nice to have that, with fashion, it was more limited. Also with fashion, our clothes are very expensive, and it's always sort of limited that people could access that as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's just, I think maybe you can tell more stories with fragrances. It's just my opinion. And I feel fragrance is also an attire. To me, at least when I wear a fragrance, it's exactly like when I'm wearing a particular amount of shirt or a color, because I want myself myself to remind something of my childhood or some kind of a memory. So for me, it's also a part of an attire, the fragrance.
Also, the idea that you don't really have a size. I mean, fashion is very size related, like you said. It's so not every color works for people, and the size doesn't necessarily work. And then you have all those other cultural things with clothing and attire, But with fragrance, it's like music. Everybody can enjoy it,
Right.
It transcends all of those limitations. I always compare it to music, because I mean, that was sort of the genre nocturne. It's like anyone can enjoy this nocturne. It's like it's just it in the air. It's for everyone to have and enjoy, and I love that about it. So.
Absolutely. Shalini, there's one thing I'm really curious about, which you don't hear a lot, is the energy part. Yeah, you mentioned the energy things, and we talked about heavily using naturals, right? So I look at Paradis Provence and that lavender and thyme. You realize that how soothing and almost therapeutic.
Yes.
Fragrances. Or when you look at Iris Lumiere, this kind of a cold silver kind of boundary. So talk a little bit about kind of highlighting and using these high quality ingredients in kind of positive energy.
Well, fragrance, if you look at the root of fragrance, it started with, prayer, meditation, healing. I mean, that's the root of fragrance. Long before, the ad campaigns came, the marketing came in and all of that. So I actually wanted to go back to the root of fragrance. And to me, I'm all about natural. The way I eat, I like to eat organic foods. I'll try to find the strawberries at the local farm. It's part of my natural thing. And also with fashion, I was using natural fabrics. I wasn't using polyesters and could even line our clothes with silk, because what touches your body should be as beautiful as what's inside. And fragrance, with the way, I mean, it's the first thing you put on your body, right? It's the closest thing you wear to your skin. So I think in a way it's the thing that can touch your soul the most. And with naturals, I mean, all these naturals, and there's a lot of research on the different naturals. I mean, lavender is a very well known one. We all know about lavender, about how it's used in all these different forms. Now, with Paradis Provence, we're using lavender in cold treatment. So it's a lavender extract and cold treatment. So there's no heat. I believe we're the only fragrance in the world that uses it because it's extremely expensive. And I mean, that's part of what happens when you use naturals, right? If you're going to the purest naturals and the highest quality naturals, it's not like using a chemical version of a rose. You're actually going to the rose from Bulgaria. So, and with Maurice, I always tell him price is no object. You just use it and use as much, as you need. Like, it's not about just putting a little tiny twist of it just to say that we're using it. It's about using it generously and fabulously so people can enjoy it, because I think that's what makes a difference. Now, would you like me to speak about Paradis and Ivy in particular, or is that sort of the indication?
Yeah, actually, because that's the one I found the most surprising, to be honest, because, from all the ones, of course, Jardin Nocturne was very, very surprising for me because of the history. But for me, this Paradis Provence was the one that completely took me by surprise.
Well, Paradis Provence is a fragrance I wear every day. It's my favorite in the collection. It's also a fragrance we gave away to nurses and doctors during COVID, because I had COVID in 2020. It was the only thing I could smell was Paradis. And Paradis Provence and Iris Lumiere were actually, when you create, sometimes you get a sort of an inclination, sort of a muse that sort of speaks to you or tells you what you are to bring into this world. It's a divine muse of sorts. And with Paradis, I was indicated to create the golden light of time, which is Paradis Provence, and Iris Lumiere is the silver light of iris. So the most important ingredient in Paradis is actually the thyme, not the lavender. Though the lavender is much more obvious and people sort of know the lavender and, they connect with it. And when I called Maurice, I said, I want to create the twin lights of creation. You have the sun and the moon. This is the twin lights of creation. And even right now, I have goosebumps that I speak about it, because it was very, very clear to me that they were going to be extremely special, and they were coming in as twin fragrances, which I had never done before. And Maurice is like, I can't use thyme, it's too medicinal. And I was like, well, it's the golden light of thyme. You have to put a lot of it in it. It's not just that you're using it in a very small level. And thyme actually is very soothing and healing. Like, it's when you use it, they have thyme tea. Like, my godsons drink thyme tea. Like, it's sort of a natural. I'm sure in Germany you probably have thyme as well, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of it.
Yeah, they have thyme tea. Now, it's not something that most people know or connect with thyme, because you sort of associate it with cooking, but actually thyme tea and using the extracts of thyme and that. So there's a lot of it in there. And then, of course, there's lavender and there's orange and there's bergamot. So the south of France is my favorite part of the world, and it transports you in one little squirt, So,
Yeah. For me, it's like sun. For me, it's like ray of light, ray of hope. Even probably it's my favorite from the collection. And I don't even like lavender. I shy away from lavender so much. But you are right. There is so much more going on, and it's not lavender centric, rather thyme centric, and that's what I love about it.
Well, the lavender you probably smelled a lot of this quality as well.
Yeah,
Because
probably.
it's very expensive. Use it. Because most lavender goes through heat treatment, and then you're losing all the healing properties of it, So,
Yeah.
I mean, Maurice called me and he's like, "Can I use it?" He's like, "Nobody's ever used it." I'm like, "Of course you must use it. It's the purest. You must use it." It was
That's
a very and then we were trying to catch, how like the artists, to me, parody and Uris, Van Gogh is one of my favorite artists. When I think of parody, I think of the sunflowers paintings. And when I think of the iris paintings, so it's almost like those are two little visuals that play in my mind that I think of parody. It's almost like they're connected at a very symbiotic level. And with Iris, it was about Iris, it was about the moon, it was about the full moon and the tides and how how the tides move with the moon. And we are so much water, right? Our bodies are so much water. Like we get affected by the moon, by the tides. And it was a very watery way of doing Iris, as you can tell.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning it. So I love Iris, right? But this is probably one of the most unique Iris fragrances I've smelled, because usually it goes in this powdery, lipsticky direction. And we all know and love that, like people who love Iris. But I could not believe that the fragrance was called Iris Lumiere, because it's much more green and
Right.
watery. It's just this green, watery iris, which is so unique and luxurious, so to say. And that's the thing that gives the silver metallic, powdery direction or nuance to it. Beautiful.
Yes, it is. It is. It's very silver. You can feel it, right? It kind of just comes at you, even though it's water. But there's silver light. Imagine silver light of the moon, like on the ocean or like any kind of water body. Actually, you could see it on a river. But I always think of the ocean because that's my great love. So but that's kind of how I see it. And Iris was we want up in Paris, we want during the day because of the different energies that you can really wear it anytime you want.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really, really impressed with the Iris Lumiere, because it's just so unique and beautiful. I mean, a very strong signature, isn't it? I think there is nothing not to like about it. It's just simplistic, elegant, very chic, this fragrance.
Okay, yeah. Well, you have the real orris butter in it, versus the chemical orris, and we went through a lot of aging, and then combining that with a hyacinth, galbanum. It's like there's just this kind of, because the hyacinth is a watery flower. I always think of it as water. Then when you cut the stalk, it's all water in there. It's like it's kind of interesting how it's mingling, and it's also like the beginning, because it has the muguet as well. It's like early spring when you see the iris, the muguet, the hyacinth all in bloom. You have the palette of the lilacs and the pinks sort of blooming. It's really pretty.
There's so much depth in it. Every time you smell it, there is just something else it evokes in you. It's difficult to describe. I think a silver light is the best way to describe.
It is.
There's no other way you can describe.
He told me, he's like, I just love that name because it evokes it so closely. And it's interesting, there's some fragrances in our collection that the moment they're launched, everybody buys them and they're just this huge success, and immediately. So Iris Lumiere was that. Parody Provence was not. Parody Provence took some time because the name doesn't really give it away, right?
Yeah.
As Jardin Nocturne, it took quite a while because nobody really knew it was an oud. It doesn't say anything oud in name, So it was kind of but with Iris Lumiere, it was very obvious. If you were an Iris lover, you were going to get it. It was like a different way of doing it. And Maurice has done the Serge Lutens Iris. I'm forgetting the name right now, but it's Serge, which is very well known, very different. That he has an Iris signature that was already out there in a different way. So
I don't know.
I think it's the mist, or I forget what it's called right now. It's
I have to look it up. There is a question from Ellie. Shalini, what impelled or gave you the desire to start creating your own perfumes?
Well, I want to say, I want to be very honest with it. If I hadn't met Maurice, I wouldn't be doing fragrances. that's not to say I didn't love fragrances or I have this great love of flowers. My mom loves flowers. I kind of grew up loving them, loving all the notes of the natural world, loving the woods, the sandalwoods, it's all of that. But, that's where destiny comes in, right? It's serendipity. It's destiny. Sometimes your life takes you on a course that you hadn't really imagined, you know? Um, and I was studying architecture. It was really strange. I was studying architecture in New York. I only had taken one fashion class, and my teacher class, she said, "Oh, Valentino is looking for someone. I'm recommending you." And I'm like, "I'm actually studying architecture. I only have one fashion class." And the next thing I know, I was working Valentino. It's like life, it's like you have to follow the road signs, So yes, there was an immense love for, the naturals. I believe in healing. I actually do healing work. So all of that was already ingrained, but there's also the serendipity, the destiny that plays a role. As you know, we didn't talk about destiny, right? It's
Yeah, absolutely.
so
That's true. Shannon, I'm curious, how has your relationship with Maurice changed or evolved during the years? Because I mean, from Shalini to the Veni Reef, which is I read that he doesn't even like gourmet fragrances, and
we both don't like
okay,
fragrances. But he created a gourmand fragrance that we could both love. He
okay,
loves that, as do I. But we both dislike gourmand fragrances in general. So, because in general, they're too sweet, It's like eating all this sugar. It's like neither of us love it. But this is a very sophisticated way of doing a gourmand, where it's not so sweet. You have a gourmand, but it's like a gourmand in a Tahitian way. It's not really a gourmand in a sugary, sweet, like
morally sweet.
this way. So,
Yeah,
so yeah, both of us do. I didn't want Neil Rab. I didn't want a gourmand fragrance in the collection. I was ready for Fleur. And he called me one day from Paris and he goes, "I'm sending you a gift from Paris." And I'm like, "Is it?" And he's like, "If you don't like it, you don't have to use it." And he said, "It's just something I'm thinking because I think you need the gourmand that he and I discussed and I didn't want." So he's like, "I've created something that we would both love." So that's how the Neil Rab. And mind you, I did love it when I first got it, and he loves it as well. So
it's like this vanilla. What is it called? A moon cake or vanilla cake? But this cumin, this adds not cumin. Sorry,
and
there's some kind of spices. There's some kind of
yes,
it's so unique that makes it that adds an edge to it, and it's not overly sweet. Some fragrances are sickeningly sugary, which after 5 minutes it really you want to wash them off.
yeah, I know they make me nauseous too.
Yeah.
Well, we also use a vanilla from Madagascar, which is the most beautiful vanilla that Sunrise has. Like they have this amazing vanilla. And then we have all the white florals, which I love. And, like a fashion, fashion designers always create collections, right? You have a vision for a collection. You don't just create a dress. I mean, that's not really a fashion designer. That's just somebody doing something. But when you create something, you create it. And that's what this is. It's a series. It's a collection. So each one sort of speaks to the other. And this vanilla was part of the joy. I'll walk you through the series and, it's sort of the moods and passions of the soul part of it. But this particular one, this fragrance is a fragrance of joy and pleasure. And it's like immediately transports you to Bora Bora. That's my vision of it. So,
That's so true. But I'm really also curious, Shalini, how has your relationship changed with Maurice? So have you had like during these years also disagreements, or I mean, like you mentioned, you always want to use the high quality ingredients, and for you it's really important that it's really the highest quality. So how has it evolved during the years?
And that he can use the highest quality ingredients. No, we never have disagreements. We actually are very cohesive in the way we design, and we're very close friends. So we have a cohesive, like Maurice and I have these called lunch dinners, and sort of started lunch and ended dinner. So that's kind of what we did after Colony was created in the afternoon. We started having lunch, and then it was like 8 hours later. So, I mean, that's kind of how I am about life. It's like when you're going to enjoy it, you enjoy it fully, you know? So, no, we don't really have any disagreements. And sometimes, you know, he'll send me 2 or 3 versions and I can choose the one I want. And he doesn't, you know, as he says, they're all his babies. So if I choose one more than the other, it's okay. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's not like he's trying to convince me to go another way. And in terms of as an artist, I mean, I have great respect for him as a person, as a human being, because he's very human, you know, Grace. He has a kindness, and he's also very pure as an artist, which I respect and admire. So we're kind of like two artists playing together. And, you know, we get comments all the time from our friends and clients that what he's created for our brand, he has done for no other. Well, first of all, he gets to use the bat. And then, you know, you have a synergy between two artists who are creating, and I'm trying to manifest something. So when you're trying to manifest something, maybe I'm getting too detailed, but you know, when you're creating with someone, you kind of bring them to your creative space, and then they are allowed to do their own creation in it. So I have a vision of something I'm trying to create. I share that with him as a poem, or sometimes as just a paragraph that I've, you know, and he's trying. It's like it's really like into that creative space to create his own thing. You know, there's a movie I always think of. It's called Elevators to the Gallows. It's Louis Mann and Miles Davis, and Louis Mann made the film, and Miles Davis watched it by himself, and he's like, "Just make the music, just create the music." It's like, here's what I have done, and now it's your turn. Do whatever you have to do. You know, I'm not the perfumer; he's the artist when it comes to being a perfumer. So it's not no disagreements.
Yeah. No, but you are right. Like the work he has done for the brand, it definitely is special. Like, you know, of course, not that his work for Frederick Malle is not special, but you realize that he's been able to, there is a symphony in the whole collection when you go from Shalini to Venire. So there is this symphony and there is this elegance, and yeah, others have it too, but there's just something special in the fragrances which you realize. It's a lot of things. It's you, it's your vision, but like you mentioned, that creative space that you put them in.
Yeah, and it's also like, you know, when you go into a museum and you're seeing a series of Monets or Van Gogh or, you know, Kandinsky or whatever, like you've seen Kandinsky 4 seasons, that one season doesn't have as much impact as all the 4 paintings, right? So I think it's also about the impact of creation. This is where the design background is. When you create something, you create it, as you said, and you create it from the start to finish. You don't just throw in things here and there, and then you're just sort of dots at a board. You know, it's really a thought process that goes from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what it has impact as well. Like
Yeah.
you're saying, it has a full impact of it. So
Absolutely. That's amazing. Shall I'll take some questions from the audience because there's so much going on here. So Nadi has a very good. Sorry?
No, I said I haven't been reading that.
Okay. No, there is in the question box. There's so many questions, and I'm glad that Nadan asked this. I also find Shalini as a timeless classic. So what was the inspiration behind the fragrance?
Well, Shalini is in a way it's an olfactory painting of my soul, and Shalini was, as I said, it was created for my skin. It was really a conversation Maurice and I were having over dinner because I was complaining about it wasn't really a pure tuberose fragrance that I loved that really brought me back to that childhood memory. And he's like, well, why don't we create one? You know, it was as simple as that. He's like, you know, why don't we create it? It doesn't exist, yes. And we went that afternoon to his atelier, and we basically went through, you know, different memories that I had, which was tuberose, and then there was Tierra memory from you know, Tahiti and beautiful Tahitian women, which sort of always, I have this great love for Tahitian women like Golga did. this great love for Tahiti, period. But and then there's Rodi, which is Sevilla. There's sandalwood, which has been part of my, intrinsic thing. I just love sandalwood. It's so beautiful. There's Musk, which is Maurice's signature. So it was really like combining all the childhood memories and bringing them together. There's vanilla there as well, which I love. I do love vanilla, but there's a really tiny hint of it. There's muguet in there. There are a lot of these flowers that I loved. And he was really trying to capture my soul. So it's like, what do you love? If you were taken into this room with one of the greatest perfumers of all time, he's like, tell me what you love, because I'm going to make your painting. But it's not a painting on a piece of canvas. It's actually a painting. So everything from your soul will pour out, and that's the inspiration of Shani. So in a way, that's why it carries my name. It is me at that age, not necessarily today, because it was when I was very young when it was created. So it's kind of like, obviously I've grown since that time. And that's what I'm saying. The series is Moods and Passions and Souls. So each fragrance is a stage of life. It's a journey of life with Fleur Nirvana.
But I personally think, Shalini, that this is also one of the most complex ones from the lineup. I don't know if you agree with me, but there's just much more multifaceted than, for example, Eris Lemire. Would you agree with me? It's just so much going on. There is tuberose, but then there's so much depth and intricacy in there.
That's joking. Well, he was trying to capture me, I mean, there we were trying to capture the mood. So it's a little different. I mean, human beings, we all have so many layers, right? So in a way, Maurice was really trying to capture who I was in that moment, And at that time, I had my companies, designer, I was a woman, I was, creating something. I had these memories. I had this great love for beautiful flowers, of travel. So, to bring all of those different aspects. Now, Vanille Rab actually has similar notes to Shalini. If you...
I will not say, yeah.
Yeah, it does, but it's a completely different interpretation of it. Because Vanille Rab, Shalini, it has the tuberose, it has the tiara, it has jasmine. Shalini doesn't really have a lot of jasmine, it's more neroli. But it's interesting, Vanille Rab actually has, it doesn't have anise either, because Vanille Rab has anise. But it's kind of like you can play the same notes, you can use the same colors and make a completely different painting,
Right.
And indicated through the brown. But yes, Shalini was, there's Joy, right, which is considered the eternal classic. At Bergdorf's, a lot of the Joy clients are now buying Shalini because it is the eternal classic. And Pat Saxby at the division at Bergdorf, she's the godmother of the brand. She always says, oh, it's one of the best fragrances in the store. She's like, it's my favorite. It's the best. So there is a certain sort of, something that's associated with it. I don't know if it's because of complexity or it's because it's the fuzz or because it bears my name. I don't know, but it's all of those elements sort of, bringing it together. I don't know if that answers the question.
Absolutely. I definitely think that sums up the fragrance better than anything else. That's lovely. All right. So Lev asks, what are your favorite natural raw materials?
Oh my gosh, the list is so long. I'm a great love nationals because I think it's just they do so much for you, right? Obviously, I love the Bulgarian rose. It's like the rose of the ultimate, the ultimate sense. I love the white. I love white flowers, which you can see, reflected in all the fragrances that we have. I mean, I love tuberose, jasmine, tiara, muguet. I mean, the list is sort of endless. Neroli. I mean, I'm in heaven in a garden. It's my favorite place. No, actually, my favorite place is the garden is second. It's it's all of those. And then I love woods. I love the idea of combining smoke. So I love sandalwood, oud, frankincense. I love the idea of smoke. Maybe it's like with Fleur, we're combining frankincense with flowers. I like the idea of a juxtaposition between smoke and flowers because it brings an interesting connection to it. And I love woods as well. So I think the list is too long.
Well, is there any ingredient that you haven't kind of figured out yet, or let's say you want to create a fragrance around it, but it's not there yet in your mind, so to say?
Well, the sea, I haven't reached the sea yet. So,
Aquatic, something aquatic, ambergris.
yeah, not necessarily aquatic, but I want to capture the sea, sort of how you smell it when you're underwater. Not so much a sunscreen fragrance, but really the seaweed, the what do you really smell when you're swimming in the Mediterranean? It's
Mhm.
yeah, it's something that's kind of percolating the sea. So,
Ah,
but there's something, there's a feeling that you have of rejuvenation for the soul, right? It's something, there's a reason why we return to the water. So it's that. So it's not going to be like literal interpretation, but something a little bit more, deeper than that, I guess. Why do we connect with it? So
I'm curious about that.
yeah, so that's not a direction you've done yet.
Would be like would be lovely. Would look forward to it. So what else? Well, there's so many questions I have to go through. Um. All right. Uh, what has been inspiring you lately in your creative process?
Well, everything inspires me, it's like, um, I mean, as an artist, you can get inspired by something you see on the street, like a piece of wood can inspire, or, history inspires me, architecture inspires me, a piece of music, flowers, it comes from all over. And that's kind of the feeling of the series as well. It's, travel inspires me. It's I mean, right now I'm looking for something historical. There's a series I want to create, which is 3 fragrances that actually comes from a historical thing that I want to reach out to. So it's really about capturing something, ethereal. So it's not really a real inspiration, but it's more about something. It could even be like a paintbrush, like a little stroke of paint. Like the color yellow inspires me. It's our signature color for the brand. It's just anything in that moment. So,
Right. I mean, you look at the two fragrances that came during the pandemic, and you realize that for me, they were full of light and hope. So
yeah.
I think that also kind of summarizes the inspiration can come from also not only happy times, but also difficult times where things are not going well.
Yes, and sometimes in difficult times is when you need to really carry the most amount of light, because you can always carry light when you're having a laugh, about things, but sometimes the hardest challenges in the difficult times should really bring light, So I think it's a challenging thing, and we launched Paris prior to thing, but then we launched Erie during the pandemic. It had just
Mhm.
more the pandemic started, so the golden
Right.
light had brought to the world.
Yeah.
Right before the craziness started. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But beautifully answered. Um, okay. Um, it would be difficult. Lydia asks, which creations make you proud?
Oh yeah, that's a
Yes,
difficult. So, I think all creation. I mean, I used to write poetry, and I'm very proud of that. When I was a teenager, I used to write poetry. Um, I think all my creations make me proud. The real thing is about bringing beauty to the world. So, my proudest moments are when I hear from customers and friends and clients telling me how it impacted them or how it touched them. I think that's what makes me really proud, when it makes a difference in someone's life. Because you can create something and lock it in a room and it doesn't affect anybody. And that does not make me.
Yeah.
It's really about how it touches someone else,
Yeah.
that's what comes in. And parody, I've heard this from somebody else as well. He said that he cried when he smelled parody. He just started crying and he's like, I've experienced before or after with any fragrance because it's just transporting him to this memory of his childhood. And I think those are the kinds of, gratitude really comes from, or being proud of something really comes from hearing that. That's where the gratitude is. So,
I mean, talking about a fragrance that definitely touched me, I had to sit down to be honest, Jardin Nocturne was one fragrance that I could not believe. For me, I don't know, it's not a fragrance, if it makes sense. It's, I grew up with it. So for me, it's the Indian attars. When you go to a temple, my
Right.
mom used to wear those jasmine flowers in the hair. I grew up in South. So
Yeah.
for me, that was not a fragrance, that was in the air. That was where I was living. So for me, I was like, how come I'm smelling it again after so many years? So that recollection for me is so powerful. That
Yeah.
that really,
It was designed that way, exactly how you're saying it. I was in Dubai visiting there, and I was visiting a friend's home, and she, there's oud always burning because they always burn the smoke. And she had this incredible jasmine garden, and her chef was making this thing with saffron. And I was standing there in the moonlight, smelling the jasmine, smelling the saffron, smelling the oud smoke that's ever present. And again, it's the chills. It's like, in a moment, you have it. In that moment of building an idea or a concept, I was like, this is what I want to capture, the divine night air. And that's exactly what you're doing. It's like, it's actually the night air. It's not, it's something ethereal. That's what it is. It's like nocturne. It's a musical composition is ethereal, It's
yeah,
not,
but it's also melancholic in a way. There is also a little bit of sadness in there, which I personally feel.
oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah,
I've heard, that it takes you to different memories and stuff, but I've never heard all of it. I'm going to give that some thought. So, and it's interesting. Maurice went to Dubai right around the same time as I did. And when I called him, we were talking about how there's, our relationship. I called him and I described what I wanted. He goes, I know exactly what you want. I was just there. I had that same experience. I knew exactly what you want.
yeah,
And that's where I think it's really beautiful because you can feel it in the air, and you felt it as a child, and you feel it in Dubai, and it's different parts of the world that evoke different things, different
yeah.
memory.
And when I went from this one to Iris, for example, there's this contrast from kind of not old school to highly contemporary, if it makes sense. Like for me, Iris Lumia is such a contemporary, new world fragrance, but for me, because of that association, for me, it could lean slightly old school. So I think this contrast I find very beautiful. Uh,
Yeah, it's interesting. When I launched Jardin Nocturne after Shalini, it was not loved.
yeah, it's complex and difficult.
Yes, people were just like, what is this? It has nothing to do with Shalini, and it was its own sort of vision or its own sort of melody, its own sort of, thought, completely different from Shalini. And I think that's what makes it interesting. And most of our clients tend to buy older fragrances because different ones resonate to you so differently. And may I briefly just touch about how the series progresses? Maybe that was sort of throw light referring to as well. So Shalini is the chrysalis state, which is the young person, young woman, young man. Jana Nocturne is the sexual fragrance. The shift from the young person was very sort of sweet and virginal to a very sensual sexual state, which is the oud. And then you have Amorum Rose, which is the love energies, the heart, the greatest love. And then you have Parody and Eerie, which are the soulmates, the twin lines of creation, the twin souls, the sort of, they're almost complementary, they're almost interlinked, interchanging. And then after that, you have Vanille Rat, which is great joy and pleasure, enjoyment of life. And finally, you have Flow, which is Nirvana. So there is an energy that's shifting from each fragrance. And Parody and Eerie are about the light. Jardin is not about the light.
Absolutely.
It's a very different, it's like the energy shift. And that's what I think is interesting about our brand, which is why I think people buy 7 fragrances, is because each one is bringing a different energy, and what you want could be different or day or in a different hour or different time of day,
Sure.
that's
That's
what
true.
makes it beautiful in a way.
I mean, for me, Jordan and Shalini are two fragrances that remind me most of home because of that strong floral
Right.
DNA, right? So they are. I could imagine that they are special and not. It's not for everyone. Like it's just really complex tuberose, and then there is this kind of oud jasmine saffron combo that is not.
There. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big obsession in the brand. Kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see what else is there in the box. Um. Okay, that's a good one. Um. Do you prefer the slower aspect of perfume making versus the fast-paced fashion world?
It's a really good question because it's as an artist, I started in architecture, and the reason I loved architecture was because architecture has longevity of design. And you create something, it lasts for decades, centuries. I mean, we're still looking at the pyramids, right? So, um, fashion to me, I didn't love about that was one of the aspects of fashion that I didn't like. The idea that you had so many seasons that you were constantly producing. But even in fashion, I have this called the classic collection where you the same style. And sometimes it was just as a design 10 years ago, but we would continue that on. And in fragrance, Shalini was launched in 2004. So I do believe, I mean, you have fragrances in the world that have launched, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. I do believe that fragrance allows, in a way, I mean, assuming you can continue with the naturals and all of that, it does allow for a longer longevity of design, which I personally, as a creative, it's very important. And we read poetry that was written so many years ago, hundreds of years ago. We see paintings from hundreds of years ago. Well, fashion can be very transient. So even though you may look at something in a museum, it's not really being recreated, 30 years later. Maybe there are maybe certain handbags, but I think for the most part, no.
Yeah, but Charlie, then that means that you don't feel pressured. I mean, we have brands who feel that every year there has to be two fragrances come out. Uh, there is a very logical aspect in it, right? Like you feel people will forget you if you don't have a fragrance coming out 2 years. I mean, that's where fragrances like these that have timeless kind of lifelong aspects thing they have, so you don't forget timeless fragrances. Or I have a feeling that, I mean, there was a gourmand missing that you added now, but I have a feeling that it has all the emotions. So you as a brand don't feel that every year I have to come up with something new, otherwise I don't know, people will forget me, or I will be irrelevant, so to say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, we launched two fragrances last year. I launched Vanilla and Slow, but prior to that, we'd only been launching one. And actually, Vanilla was supposed to be launched last year, and then we were going to save Fleur for this year, for spring. But we had, we had Harrods and Bergdorf's, and they were very keen, and we had clients who were just wanting it. They wanted Fleur right away. So we kind of did the launch in October, but our real launch occurred this year. So we had the big party in March at the Pierre Hotel, and cherry blossoms. It was magical. But so to answer your question, so far we have been doing one. We didn't do one this year because we kind of did two last year. I don't really know how it would transpire if we didn't do one. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know to say this, but I feel like we're expanding with our retailers. Like we just launched at Saks and Neiman's. So in a way, we're expanding to more and more clients. So some people don't own all seven fragrances, so they're still discovering the brand within it. And I do think that I'm trying to create something that doesn't go away, doesn't disappear. And I don't want to bring something up before it's ready. As a creative person, I don't push the boundary and launch something before it's ready. So I think good things come to those who wait. So
Okay. I think it's very much true in fragrances.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at all the popular fragrances that really touch people's heart, they take time, or at least the ones have come up across, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that we're receiving, I mean, we're a small company, but we're receiving the accolades, and we're being established with the larger brands that have been around for, longer, or they have much larger, organizations or whatever, or part of much larger companies. And so we're getting sort of the accolades, we're getting the recognition for what is being created. And I personally find that my own energy tells me what I want to do next. Like this year, I decided it's all going to be about launches, about exposing it to more brands, more clients, to more retailers, to more, areas of the world, and really sort of bringing it out into the world. Because the 7 were complete, the series was complete, and I wanted that to be my focus, was to say, okay, now series, and what do we go for? It's
Lovely.
launch it in more and more places.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a very great bridge to my next question. Um, Julian asks, which marketing measures work the best so far for the brand? But before you answer this, Shalini, I wanted to talk about the pricing, right? So it's very clear. It's one of the most luxurious brands out there, and you can define luxury in 100 different ways. I see it as a quality. I see the timelessness and elegance. So, are you concerned being in that price segment, not being able to kind of, reach everyone because of that kind of price segment? Or is that something that you say, hey, I would rather not, go down on the quality, so to say? But, how do you see that?
Um, See, I think that there are a lot of fragrances out there at lower price points with lower quality, and I don't think that I need to. So it's kind of when people ask me about pricing, it's really about the naturals, the price of the naturals, and the quantity of the naturals. And these are pure parfums, so the concentration of oil is over 25%. Now, you can't really compare it with the EDP, but the concentration is, maybe 10%. So you're constantly having to reapply, reapply, reapply. So you're using up your bottle, because you're reapplying 4 times a day because you're at only 10% concentration. So it's 2 levels of things. One is, I wanted to create a brand that was going to have the purest naturals, the highest quality of naturals. And, unfortunately, without pricing. And then we do everything in France. We're not made in China. Well, our bottles are made in France. Even our boxes are made in France. Like, there's all of those details that go into it. And to answer the thing, I mean, we did introduce our little bottles, these $150 bottles, because I was like, well, if you can't do the larger size, at least you can get a really beautiful thing at the smaller size, So it allows people to come in at the price. But believe it or not, most of our sales are the larger price point. It's not the smaller one, because people sort of realize that what they buy quality. And also in the last sort of 6 years, like with everything that's been going up, we have held our pricing. We have not raised our pricing at all. So it's interesting because a lot of brands went up prices. Actually, they're coming closer to our price point, but they're not because we have sort of held steady. We didn't really increase it. And I think that if it was a choice between lowering quality to lower price, I wouldn't do it ever.
Yeah. And I think you realize it when you smell iris, for example, or you smell jada, why it makes sense, right? Like, and also the fragrances are not loud, but they just feel like second skin, and that's when you realize, okay, that's what you pay that premium for. And I think there's nothing can convince you. Just you have to spray something like iris or jada up to it.
And every person has their own sort of vision or creative thing, and I just think if I lower the quality, what would be the point? It would just be like, then I'm just not creating something that's cohesive with what I want to create, you know? It's, and as you said, you can tell from the quality when you wear it. And most of our clients who do wear it, they never question it. It's people who have never tried it. They're like, why? But we do have the answer. It's also pure parfum. Because somebody was asking us if we could dilute the formula and then offer it a lower price point. I could do that. But then what would be the point? You'd just be reapplying it more often to get the same impact as getting with the pure parfum.
Right.
I also think with the naturals, you need that strength to really feel it. So in a way, you eat something really delicious, even though it's tiny, it sort of satiates a lot more than eating, this much of like something more, which is not really as, delicious or, doesn't really, or whatever, that's my belief in life in general.
No, absolutely.
So I'd rather have a small thing that's really beautiful than have this huge thing that's not really beautiful.
Right.
So it's a design philosophy, a life philosophy.
Right. That's absolutely. So let's take one more question before I let you go, because we are coming to an hour point. There's still so many. All right. So this also
answer the too long.
No. It's perfect. I mean, it's coming out to be perfect. Lydia asks, and this was also what my next question would have been, or last one. You are very selective of the doors, and I know that you are trying, or there are some talks going on. So, what are your plans for EU or some other parts? Are you available in EU at all? I know Mark from Berlin. There are still some possible open doors, but what are the plans?
Well, we're in Harrods in London, which is not technically EU, but we're in Harrods. We're in Amsterdam with Perfume Lounge. We're with Introspection in Luxembourg, with the Virginia and ID21 in Italy, and trying to think if there's anyone I missed. And then, of course, in Switzerland, which is technically EU, but we just Vincent House, and then we also have Time Valley. Vincent House is in Zurich, and then Time Valley. I'm not sure if from Switzerland if they ship there, but you said,
but it's higher shipping. I think they do ship with the shipping costs.
Yeah, but I mean, you do have Harrods that I think offers free shipping all over the EU, and then Perfume Lounge, which is lovely, which they have, they have the smaller sizes, and they also have larger sizes, and they're very sort of very sweet, very friendly, and they don't have. I think that they place their own orders and they add things in for their clients. So they're very sort of accommodating, and I think they do some samples out and Jim at Inspection is lovely. Virginia, she's such a sweet lady. So we tend to go. I believe in energy, so I like to work with retailers who have a beautiful energy, and that's one of the reasons we're talking to Mark, because Mark's so sweet, So he's probably never heard that before, but that's why we like him, because he's sweet. So it's kind of, it's kind of why I wanted to have the live with you. As I said, I don't do too many lives, but I see the lives, and I felt your energy was very sweet. You had a beautiful soul, and I wanted to, that's kind of how I make life decisions or business decisions.
That's lovely, Shani. I'm really glad you did that. So the last thing I would like to ask is, you talked about 7 fragrances and the collection being complete, and you hinted a little bit towards the historic collection. Maybe can you talk a little bit about this? Is that coming? When is it coming? Have you already started working on it?
It's percolating.
Okay.
It's probably going to launch. So I would ideally like to launch all 3 in one go, because it's a series and it's a very tight series of 3 fragrances. But we have to sort of see how it develops. With Maurice, sometimes, like with Paradis and Iri, I wanted them together, but we ended up launching them a year apart. So it's really, it's sort of a dialogue. So we have to see. If we decide to do all 3 together, we may wait for another year. If I do just one, it will happen next year. So it just remains to be seen how it develops. So I kind of don't like to force it. I mean, that's where I think it's the difference comes in between our brand. And we already have orders for them. We already plans like, we want to order your next fragrance. I'm like, we don't have it yet.
Yeah,
We just
that's
want to
really
about our, very loyal clients.
right.
Yeah, they're very, very
That's lovely. That's really great. But Shalini, do you have any plans to come to Europe? Like there is Exhaust coming next year. Any plans? Do you visit fairs at all?
I don't do access. I do the duty free in con. I didn't do it this year because we're having a big event.
I was there. I was there. I was asking Jessica if was Shalini there. Did I miss it? It was really lovely to be in
Yeah, swimming in the Mediterranean in August instead.
Right.
So we did a big event at Bergdorf's in October, which happened to fall right around the time there. And it was a charity event. I support children's charities. And it was very important for me to sort of focus all my energy here. That's why we didn't go. And also, I found that we were just having, we have so many requests from retailers wanting to carry the brand. I don't need to add to that list right now. We already are. That's the just had to go. But I actually do hope to come there this year. I mean, this coming year. So I do hope to do that. So
yeah, I would love to meet you in person. But thank you very much, Shalini. It was really, I think, one of my highlights, probably the last live of the year, and I couldn't have asked for a better guest than you. I think your positivity is very contagious. I've always heard this. I've always seen it in other lives, but I got to experience it. So thank you very much for spending this hour with us. The fragrances are magical. And everyone who's listening, I just can only recommend to sample them, and you would see what I'm talking about.
Thank you so much, Raul. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And I'm so happy we got to do it. So,
Absolutely.
I know we went back and forth, but I'm so happy we got to spend this time. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's not the last time. I'm pretty sure we will talk about this again.
Sorry? I'm sorry?
I'm pretty sure it's not the last time we will talk about other fragrances, other things, definitely again. But thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be having more launches.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Shalini. Really appreciate it.
A beautiful holiday season. Sending you lots of light, everybody. So, wishing everyone a happy holiday season. So,
take care, everyone. Thank you very much, Shalini. Bye.
Bye.